Hey everybody, welcome to Simple Songwriting episode 7. Woo, we made it to 7 episodes.
Lucky number 7.
Lucky number 7. Yeah, so today we're talking about Faint by Linkin Park. This song, I think this was actually, well, obviously In the End was like the big one, and I think it was the first one that I heard that got me in. That's just like the main one. But this song, what?
I was gonna say I was surprised of all the Linkin Park songs that I was kind of like, this is the one you go with, Kim.
Well, okay, so this song is really like this was like my favorite. This was the one that I listened to on repeat in 7th grade. You know, like I just thought it was the coolest thing. It changed, like it was just one of those songs. It was actually one of the first like real heavy songs I listened to. It's not even really that heavy, but like, it was just my like Linkin Park was a band that got me in like rock music. Period. Like before that, I mostly just listened to country and maybe a little bit of pop, like Matchbox 20 and stuff. But Linkin Park was like, what is this, you know? And this song in particular was always like one of my favorites. So the theme for this episode is we're talking about the reason I wanted to talk about this song was because we spoke about We Didn't Start the Fire, and you had mentioned that Billy Joel didn't like that melody. You said it was a bad melody. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and so I wanted us to spend some time and talk about like, well, what is a good melody? Like, what makes a good melody? And there were a lot of options when you're thinking about like, okay, what song has a good melody, right? Um, I went back and forth on a couple different songs, but when I really started thinking like, okay, what's an example of like a song that is pretty simple, but also like it's great. Like the melodies are great, but they're not like overly complicated. Like like there are songs that have great melodies, but there's just these wild chord progressions underneath them that kind of inspire the melodies. And it's like, okay, but you can have a great melody with just a pretty simple chord progression and like not super theoretical stuff. So how do you do that? And what does that look like? And, you know, I just immediately thought of Linkin Park, and I was like, this song to me has one of the best chorus melodies, and it's not that complicated. It's really pretty simple, but it's a good melody. So that's why I wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think it's probably pretty much just all power chords, right?
yeah, it's a combination of power chords. I don't know what the tuning is in, but it's definitely a drop tuning. So
Yeah.
either like drop. I think they might have played in like drop C. I want to say. Maybe it was a drop D flat actually. I can look it up, but
I'm already on it.
yeah, look it up while I'm talking. I want to say it was D flat, but I could be wrong.
I was gonna say it literally says C sharp or drop D flat.
Hell yeah, nailed it.
Not drop D or drop C.
Well, no. D flat. That's probably a drop tuning though. Can you see the tunings of the strings?
Hold on, let me click the thingy.
Yeah, look at all 6 strings.
C sharp, G sharp, C sharp, F sharp, A sharp, D sharp.
All right, so yep, that is drop D flat tuning, or it could be drop C sharp because there's 2 C sharps there. The reason why you do that for people who don't play guitar, so you've got 6 strings on a guitar, and so to play a power chord.
Wait a second.
What?
But then the thingy above it, that doesn't make sense. It says 2 different things.
What's it saying?
This makes no sense. So if I'm looking at, okay, I'm using Ultimate Guitar for the record, and the thingy in the top says tuning E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, E flat, and then when you scroll down to the actual tablature itself, it says D flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B flat, E flat. And then when I scroll down to the actual I take that back. There's 3 different tunings they have listed.
What the? Okay, hold on. Faint guitar.
Unless it's 2 different tunings per guitar, but surely no. Can you do that? Can you have your 2 guitar tunes differently? That doesn't make sense.
Okay, it is yeah, it's drop D flat. I'm looking at, some stuff here. Yeah, it's definitely drop D flat. So here's the reason why you would do that, just to, like, explain to people who don't play guitar. When you're playing like a big like a chord which is multiple strings at the same time, y on a standard tuning guitar you would need 3 fingers, like your pointer finger, your ring finger, and your pinky finger to play that chord because of the way that the guitar is structured. But what you can do is there's what's called drop tuning, where you can tune one of the strings, a little bit differently, and what it allows you to do is play that same chord except with one finger on all 3 strings. So you can just play, you know, lots of chords quickly with just one finger pressing against the string. So it allows you to play like more complicated chord progressions faster. Because imagine trying to move all 3 of those fingers at the same time. Like, if you were to go like play 3 chords that goes like dun dun dun, you would need to move all 3 of your fingers to go dun dun dun. But if you had it tuned so that you could play each of those chords with one finger, you could hypothetically have like, just your pinky play one of the chords, and then your middle finger play another chord, and then your pointer finger play another chord. So you can do the dun dun dun, and it requires way less movement for your left hand, that's actually touching the strings. So yeah, little guitar knowledge for y'all. But yeah, it is in drop C sharp tuning. Why did we start talking about that? I can't remember.
Um,
Uh,
we were just I mentioned power chords, and you're like, "Yeah, I think it's in a drop tuning," and then I was like, "I can
oh,
figure it out."
that's right. Yeah, yeah. So they're playing power chords, but they also have octaves and stuff playing in the chorus, which is pretty cool. Very nifty. So we'll get to that though. Okay, before we dive into the song, what have you been listening to, Aubrey?
Um, really, today was all about the new Eminem album, The Death of Slim Shady, Coup de Gracie. How do you say that? Coup de
I
Gras?
think it,
Gras?
I think it's officially pronounced coup de grace,
Okay. Coup
but
de
he
Gras?
said that I think that in like one of the songs he very like angrily says "to de grace," like on purpose.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, I've only, like I said, I told you earlier, I've only listened to it cover to cover one time. And
mm,
it's a lot to unpack. So still unpacking a lot of things there. Um,
yeah.
Other than that, I discovered Time Cop 1983.
What is that?
It's like, imagine just Stranger Things music is the best way I can think of describing it.
Time
S-
Cop 1983.
yeah, specifically, "Escaping the Void" was the song that got me hooked, which admittedly discovered in like an Instagram post. I was like, I like that song. I gotta figure out what it is, and then I kind of listened to two of the albums.
Does
Um,
it have vocals, or is it like just retro soundtrack?
I don't know. I haven't listened to his whole gig, but the stuff I have listened to does not have vocals so far.
Okay. That's cool
Uh,
though. I love stuff like that.
yeah, uh, it's very much like Kavinsky esque, I would say.
Mhm.
But that's pretty much it on my end. What about you?
Yeah, I listened to the new Eminem album last night, right when it released. And then I basically had it on repeat all day today. And yeah, there is a ton of stuff to unpack on that. Honestly, like spoiler alert, I loved it. I thought it was actually phenomenal, but we're definitely gonna do like an episode on it. So I won't talk too much about it now. But yeah, I think he really outdid himself. I mean, the dude sounds hungry. So I was really impressed with that. But also yesterday, a very special song came out, "Women's World" by Katy Perry. Uh, I don't know if you got the chance to hear about that or if you even listened to it.
I did not and have not, but I will. I'm actually I can get into some Katy Perry.
Yeah, why don't you listen to it and then we'll talk about it. I
Okay.
won't spoil it. It is something. It's yeah, I don't know. That was one of those songs where I was like, "What did I just hear?" Um, so yeah, take a listen. Definitely an interesting song. Actually, you know what's funny? I will say this. It reminds me of another song. I don't want to spoil this too much because I've actually wanted to do an episode on this on a specific topic related to Katy Perry and some other songs that I've heard. Um, we can talk about it later. It's an episode that I've actually had in the back of my mind for a long time. But yeah, uh, I just think that there's this weird trend in songs now that is just awful. Uh, I'm not, and I know that that's super ambiguous, but yeah, we'll talk
Bum,
about that later.
bum, bum.
Yeah. Anyway, that'll come back, so don't worry. We'll bring that up again. But yeah, it was. I wasn't particularly a fan. It was kind of a weird. You should watch the music video with it too. The music video is kind of
I will.
yeah. It's weird. It was really weird, and so yeah. That's about it though. Just the new Eminem and Katy Perry. That's pretty much all I've done. So I think we're gonna talk about both of those at some point too. So yeah,
Yeah. Cool.
cool.
Alrighty. Well, leading into Faint by Linkin Park.
Hey, real quick,
One.
hold
Oop,
on, Aubrey. You're sounding just a little bit muffled.
how about now?
That's better.
Okay. Before we do our breakdown of Faint by Linkin Park, always like to mention we expect or anticipate that you have heard the song before listening to the episode. So now would be a good time to go listen to the song
Hmm.
before we do our thing.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah,
It's a great. It's a great
I'll,
song too. It's a short song. It's the shortest song we've covered so far.
yes, we'll see
Yeah.
what kind of episode it turns into.
Right. Dun dun. uh. Okay. So yeah. Let's just start with like our overall thoughts on the song, and then we'll get into like the specifics. I'll go first on this one. I I already kind of said it, but I really like this song. I've always thought this song was super cool. Um, Linkin Park in general, I feel like was such a pivotal band for a lot of people. For me personally, it was what got me into rock music and like just heavier guitar style. But they just something about them and what they were doing at the time was so different from everything else and so unique. Um, yeah, they just captured something really awesome. Uh, I will say I wasn't particularly a fan of a lot of their later albums. Um, and I'll kind of go into that in more detail as we get into this because I think the way that they compose songs and the stuff that they write is I, I think it's somewhat unsustainable, and I'll explain why later. But yeah, I think that for the time that they existed and what they were doing, especially for the first two albums, Hybrid Theory and Meteora, I mean, they were on fire. Like everything they made was an absolute banger. So yeah, this song, I loved it. It was probably the heaviest song I had ever heard at the time. I really didn't grow up around a lot of rock or metal. My parents were not super like musical people. They listened to a whole lot of pop and country. And so this was like my first introduction into like heavy music. So yeah, I have a soft spot for the song in particular. Um, and it just captures a lot of things that I like about Linkin Park. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Um, So I thought of like all the Linkin Park songs to pick. I thought this was an interesting choice that you picked.
Mhm.
Um, I think Faint's a great song, and I think it is like I think one of their more recognizable songs, but not one of their more popular songs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, like when I think of Linkin Park, my brain goes to like Numb in the end. Uh,
Mhm. Maybe like
you know,
what I've done or bleed it out or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah. I also feel
Crawling.
yeah, I also feel like Linkin Park is such a unique band. One of the first bands, at least that I know of, that did like the whole having two lead singer things, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot more bands have done that more after them that I'm aware of, at least. But I don't feel like ever quite as well. I feel like it's like a clean voice guy and then a screamy guy, you know?
Yeah, like a Atreyu.
Um, yeah. Um,
Yeah,
and
I think that they captured it really like it with Linkin Park, it just always felt like their songs and like them as a band was it was just like such a tight unit. Like does that make sense? Like
yeah, no, no, no. Yeah,
I never
I
felt like the
agree.
two singers were like fighting each other. Like in
No,
fact, from what I can tell, it's like they were best friends and they were always trying to like find good spots for each other and like where
yeah,
they could fit in.
find a way to complement each other.
Mhm.
Um, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. After the Minutes to Midnight album, I didn't really get back into Linkin Park until One More Light.
Yeah.
So that was, and they released quite a few albums between Minutes to Midnight and so Minutes to Midnight came out in '07. So literally 10 years later was the
Yeah.
next time they put out an album that I like really enjoyed. Um,
Interesting. I am gonna be honest. I did not like One Last Light or One More, whatever it was.
One More Light.
One More Light. And I know, you know, like I just I have to keep it objective. I was not impressed by that album. And I know that that's kind of a bummer because that was the last album Chester was able to put out, and like I loved Chester. Like Chester was like my childhood, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I felt like here's my thing: if you're gonna change genres and you're gonna do things in a new genre, I think I've mentioned this before. Like you have to abide by the rules of that genre. And like each genre has its own tropes and its own cliches. And there are different ways to be creative in different genres. So in my mind, it's like when I'm talking about like Post Malone going over into country, it's not enough for you as Post Malone to do a country song. You have to do a creative country song. You don't just get to not be creative anymore because you're doing something that's different for you. Like you know, I'm not saying oh don't be adventurous or have fun or whatever, but it's like if you're going to make a generic country song but you've never made a country song, it's still a generic country song. And I I, I felt that way about some of Linkin Park stuff. You know, if you're going to write a pop song, you got to be there's great pop out there. You can make creative great pop. But I was like a lot of those songs I just wasn't feeling them. I'm like this is very like I don't know. It just didn't resonate with me at all. And I felt like a lot of the things that they did that were so unique over time, like over each album, slowly got eroded and like more. I don't know. I don't want to say generic, but yeah, like when I remember everyone talking about like what was it, 10,000 Suns? Did you ever listen to that album?
I did, but not until like I literally like the One More Light album came out, and then I was like, oh crap, Linkin Park hasn't put out an album in forever. And then I
Mhm.
looked at their discography. I was like, oh, I've missed like 3 or 4 albums by them that I had no idea existed.
Yeah, I know they did. So it was Minutes to Midnight, and then I think they did like 10,000 Suns, and then the hunting party, I want to say.
Something like that.
Yeah, the hunting party. And everyone was like, oh, the hunting party got heavy again. And I don't know. I don't think I actually listened to the whole album, to be fair. But I I just think that so maybe I will just talk about this now because I think this is going to be integral to like talking about the song. Linkin Park did was really good at taking like simple things and like doing them very effectively. So in this song, for example, like when we get to the verse, like there's just one the guitar part in the verse is literally just it's just like one note, just dun, and that's cool. That's super cool. Like they nailed all the but the thing is the verse has a lot of layers. And so that guitar part was perfect. They had this really cool string section and then they have a like it almost sound it's like a synth string section to be fair. The and that's what happens in the intro and it plays all throughout the verse. And then there's almost like this cello in the background going like dun, dun, da-na-na, or something like that, and the cello's super cool, and then they get in, like, I think it's like a delayed guitar or something that's going like dun 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 dun. And so essentially they create this really cool soundscape, but each section is very, very simple on its own. And so Linkin Park always they were good at that, like keeping things very simple, but also like walking the line of, not overdoing it, but also creating a soundscape that was very full and like fulfilling to listen to. And I just think over time they slowly like chipped more and more of that away and made it simpler and simpler until finally it's like all of the cool things that they like part of what made it cool was all of the layers and all the depth to it, and they broke it down to its bare bones to such an extent that it to me it just wasn't interesting anymore. It wasn't really appealing. I remember when that one song, what was it called, Heavy, the lead single from One Last Light, I remember when that came out and it was just so sparse and I don't know. I was like, this is just it's not like I have a problem with a band trying new things or going pop, but it was so sparse and empty to me. I just I wasn't I wasn't impressed. So
I feel you. Like I said, they literally released 3 albums that I didn't know exist. So,
yeah. I and so
um,
I think the main point that I want yeah, and I think the main point I wanted to make was like when you're doing songwriting like that, where you have these layers that are all pretty simple, but you're just putting them together in an interesting way, it's like that's cool, but at some point you have to write more complicated compositions to keep things interesting. At some point, because when you think about like a when you think about music and like a simple thing in music, like that guitar part, like the darn guitar part, and then you just have like the da 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 playing in the background. It's like those are very, very simple parts. And there's only so many times that you can do that before it starts to get boring. So at some point you have to either what you do is you either simplify it more and keep stripping it down, or you start to get more complicated and have more depth and like find new ways to create depth in your songs. And I feel like they did the former, and I prefer the latter. I like it when artists take more risks and experiment more because like that's the thing when you write a more complicated melody or a more complicated guitar part, you take the risk of like, well, what if that's too much, or what if it's distracting to the ear, or what if like it's more risk, but it also leads to more reward because you've actually created something you've built something rather than stripped away. So anyway, that's kind of like a general tangent of like why I think they what
I don't know. I just think it's funny that we, right? You know,
what wait what'd you say?
I don't know. I just think it's funny that we're just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know. Like it's kind of like tangent, tangent, tangent. All right, now listen to the episode, but here's the whole point
uh,
up
I
front.
know, sorry. Well, to be fair, this will kind of inform a lot of the what we
Yeah,
talk
yeah, yeah,
about
yeah. No, I
because
know.
yeah, no, my bad, but
No, you're
this
fine.
but the thing is like how can I phrase this? Like it's
I get what you're saying.
when we start talking about this stuff, I feel like it's gonna be important to know like maybe where I'm coming from
Yeah,
because I'm gonna say like, okay, this guitar part is awesome. This is really cool. But I just think it's important to note that like I think that this style of songwriting is kind of unsustainable. You can't do this forever. Like you can't write a verse where the guitar part is just forever. At some point, you have to write a guitar part, or like you can't do the same exact thing every time. So you either remove the guitar entirely, or you add more complicated guitar parts. And what they decided to do was remove the guitar entirely, and that's why most of their songs are so empty in their later albums. And I think that I think that that is like Linkin Park's like biggest flaw. And that's one of the biggest issues that they had as they went on is they just kept stripping away and they didn't add. And so like you think about, even like this latest Eminem album, he has the beats are so complicated and there's so much depth to them and you can tell that like he's slaved away at making sure like all the little layers and things that are in there were so purposeful and like he made sure to keep striking that balance with more complicated beats and more complicated production. He didn't just keep stripping away and stripping away. And he does the same thing with his rap vocals too. And you hear it with Linkin Park's rap vocals where like the rap vocals on Hybrid Theory and Meteora are so complicated and in depth, and like you could tell they spent a lot of time working on the flow and the melodies and stuff. And then over time, they got simpler and slower until finally you just have like most of the album just doesn't even have rap at all. And it's like, well, that was one of the most unique things about you guys, you know? So,
Yeah. I think um I think two more things I want to point out, and then I think we
mhm,
can do the breakdown.
yeah.
Um, One, I feel like growing up, you were either a Meteor kid or a Hybrid Theory kid. I'm
Mhm.
assuming since you picked Faint, you're a Meteor kid.
Well, here's the thing. I knew a lot of the songs on Hybrid Theory and Meteora actually, but I wasn't really a music fan when I first found Linkin Park. Like I wasn't actually like super passionate about music. In fact, at the time, I was taking piano lessons and I literally remember thinking like piano's stupid, music is stupid, and I'm not interested. So it's funny how things work out, but like so all I ever did was just get a couple singles on my iPod. So I had like Crawling in the End, Paper Cut, media I think Figure point 0.9 or 0.9,
Yeah.
um Numb, Faint. So I only had singles from the two albums. I definitely listened to more of Meteora, but then I wouldn't even say that I was a Meteora kid because I didn't listen to like two-thirds of the album.
Right. I was gonna say you're like Diet Meteora.
Yeah, like Diet Meteora. And so but the thing is what's funny is in high school I finally like after I became a much more like uh informed and skilled musician myself, I went back and was like, yo, I never actually listened to all of Linkin Park. So I got Hybrid Theory and listened to the whole album, and I was absolutely floored. Like so many of those songs that I had never heard, I was like, geez, these songs are incredible. Um, like Forgotten or A Place in My Head, like those songs are so good. And I literally didn't hear them until like 2012. It's crazy. And
That is wild.
it is wild, and so but that was the thing, I wasn't really that interested in, like, listening to a whole album, I just wanted the songs that I liked because I was one of those people in middle school, but what's funny is shortly after that, I went and got Meteora as well, and I listened to all of Meteora, and I actually didn't have that reaction to Meteora, I actually was kinda like, "Oh, this is nowhere close to as good as Hybrid Theory."
So you're
um,
a Hybrid Theory kid.
I am a Hybrid Theory guy now,
I'm a
y
Hybrid Theory kid.
yeah, it's just funny because like I've listened to Linkin Park in different ways at different stages in my life, and
Yeah.
my opinions on the songs have kind of gone all over the place. And we'll talk about that too, because I think lyrically, uh, the songs from this era and like of Linkin Park, they hit you in different ways as you get older.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah, so I wasn't really that impressed with Hybrid Theory actually. I was kind of like, oh, these songs just get
Right.
really stale after a while.
Hybrid Theory or Meteora?
Sorry, Meteora, yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, Meteora was the opposite. Every single song felt super unique. Uh, and again, it going back to what I was saying before, you can hear the difference from Hybrid Theory to Meteora, where Hybrid Theory, it's like every single second they like combed over it and made sure the production was on point. There's all these sounds and layers and things going on. Like each song is so deep and full and they're just great. And then Meteora, they stripped it down just a little bit, not a crazy amount, but they definitely stripped the sound down. And then they just kept doing that. And I think that that's not that it was to their detriment because one of the things, well, and let's get into the breakdown and then I'll talk about that because I think it was to their detriment because the other elements of their songs, like the lyrical content, like the song structure, and like the compositional elements, like the guitar parts and stuff, are all very simple and straightforward. Like the song structures are very simple: verse, chorus, bridge,
Yeah.
chorus. Every song, every single song. So it's like they couldn't fall back on like making more interesting song structures because that's just not something that they chose to do. So to me, the way that they made these very simple, straightforward songs work and so great was the layering and the depth and the like taking this 15-second verse or like 20-second chorus or whatever and just jam packing it with sounds and turning it into a soundscape essentially. So yeah, that was their pro, and then over time they lost that, and so then they are just making empty normal verse chorus bridge chorus songs, and I don't think that worked for them, but uh it 100% worked for them on these two albums, and so that's what we're going to talk about. So
Um.
okay, let's get into the song.
Yep.
um all right, just taking a little water. Okay, so the song starts off with an intro, and it's a really cool little like a synth string intro. The and yeah, they so I want to compliment them here because so now we're okay. Now that I got like most of like my criticisms out of the way, let's start complimenting. We've talked about this before, where like in the intro or at the beginning of the song, you introduce the melodies and the sounds that will be heard later on in the song. So that way the listener can become familiar with them. So by the time you get to those parts later on, they're not new or surprising. The listener already knows them. And so it sticks a little bit harder. Um, I'd say aside from the bridge, the heavy bridge where he screams, you hear all of the music or like most of the music on this song within the first 30 seconds. This little synth string part here is what's played throughout all of the verses. It's a really cool little part. It's got a super unique sound to it. It doesn't actually sound like strings. Um, like I don't believe that it was played on a real violin. It might have been, but it definitely has that like glitchy like rap beat type of sound to it.
I was gonna say if it was on a real violin, it's distorted in some fashion. It's not pure.
Normal
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and so that's something yeah, like so let's talk about the vibe that this song's trying to create real quick. Like this you can see it on the cover, the spray painter dude with the brown and the black. Like this was definitely meant to be like that underground new metal alternative type of vibe. And that's something that Linkin Park would like. I mean, they were like almost the pioneers of
I
that.
was gonna say, yeah, they literally like Linkin Park did things that, in my opinion, artists at the time were were not. Uh,
Yeah, like
and
it makes
I don't even know really that another artist or group band, whatever you want to say, has done since.
yeah,
At least that I'm
like
aware of.
that's the thing, like especially with hybrid theory, it's when you go and you listen to that, it's like it's one thing for a band to do like have a song that does like one thing that's super different and creative, right? So like I think about like Metallica making Fade to Black, and that was one of the first times like a thrash metal band made a ballad. I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. But when you listen to Hybrid Theory and like specifically like In the End, right? They do like eight things that had like never been done before. on like a popular song. Like first off, just mixing the rap vocals with the rock vocals. Chester, the way that he sang was extraordinarily unique. I like had anyone ever actually sang like him before that? I just
I mean, I'm sure probably just maybe not got as much attention for it. You know what I'm saying?
right. But that's the thing too. It's like you think about like singers prior to that or bands prior to that. Because when did Hybrid Theory come out? Like 1999, something like that.
That or
2000.
2000. Hold, let me check. Do 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 do.
Oh,
Hybrid
2000.
Theory was 2000. Yeah,
Yeah.
Meteora was 03.
So you think about like what bands were doing before 2000. You've got like grunge, right? So you'll have maybe like a, Nirvana.
Nirvana. Yep.
I mean, even that, it wasn't quite like,
No, it's not the same.
yeah, it's not the same. And so then you even look at something like Pantera, and there, you know, it's still not quite the same. Like they were still it was heavy, but it wasn't like something about Chester's voice had this refinement to it that was
Yeah,
like
it's
like he
different.
yeah, like he'd sing this one note and hold out the same note, but he could make it just sound so and it's just like one pure straight note, right? He's not like shouting it, spurting it out, or like going up or down in the pitch. Cause I could have Pantera like on something like Cemetery Gates where he goes, yeah.
Yeah,
So they go way up and down, or yeah, and they go really heavy. But this idea of just hitting this one like, yeah, yeah, and just like holding that out and just like getting that grit in there, it really wasn't like uh, his whole sound was completely unique. And then just putting that over like the rap vocals too. And then not to mention like the production on the songs and the mix of the songs. Like everything about Hybrid Theory was it's like that whole album was just this massive like ball, like a meteor of creativity. No pun intended.
I was about to say.
Yeah, no, like it really was just such a creative album with and on so many levels. Like the piano on In the End. I think, In the End was like it's hard to talk about Linkin Park without talking about that song because that song is just ridiculous. Um the emotion, like Chester could have all of the emotion in the world, but then just do some of the most savage like I hesitate to call it screaming. It is screaming, but
Yeah,
it's
it's more of like a distorted
yeah.
voice.
But it's funny because it lends itself to like the emotion of the song. Like he really sounds like because Linkin Park is, you know, it's they really are like the definition or like the pioneers of the angsty sound. Like they're very angsty. It's very much like when we talk about Linkin Park a lot now, it's usually people who grew up in or listen to them in like middle school. And that's because that's when you're angsty, right? And so that having that distorted scream allowed him to get that angstiness through. Um, and I think that's why it resonated with so many people.
I think it's really interesting because when I think of angst, I don't think of Linkin Park.
What do you think of?
I think of like My Chemical Romance. Um,
So that's okay. I'm glad you said that because that's kind of why if you know, I was like hesitating to find the word and why I said they're like the pioneers of it. Like they're the ones who really like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like even looking at this song where you have the lyrical content is about like my parents won't listen to me. Like, you know, it's very much like this youthful energy type of thing. And you're right, maybe angst isn't quite the right word, but I still think it speaks more to like that younger, almost like middle school, high school, like uh emotional state.
I can get behind that. I just don't know that I would use angst. But you're right. I can't think of a better word, and I'm trying really hard.
It's
Maybe
almost
just
like it's
emotional.
how about this? It's angst without the cringe. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Diet angst. Okay.
Diet angst. Well, so here's the thing too, right? Because
Mature angst. How about that?
well, here's what I was about to say. It's like it was Oh, what was I just about to say? Oh, okay. It's struck the right balance of like, because when you think of angst, there is this element of like, I don't know, like distress and almost like a little bit of weakness. I know that I'm not trying to like go too deep into it, but like there is
What
this.
is the actual definition of angst? Let's Google that.
Yeah, here I'm on it. Um,
Because, like, to be fair, I don't think I can tell you the definition of angst. I just like know what I feel like it is.
okay,
You know?
so here it is: a feeling of deep anxiety or dread, typically an unfocused one about the human condition or the state of the world in general. A feeling of persistent worry. So I think that's kind of what I mean where when I said like angst typically has this element of like I hate to weakness sounds bad, but it is this position of like vulnerability or weakness or anxiety, dread. Like it's not like you don't typically associate angst with like power or strength, you know? Whereas I feel like Linkin Park found a nice balance of like, yes, there is this youthful dread or anxiety that permeates their songs, but they were always very empowering and like uplifting in various ways. Like this one in particular is a very angry song, but and it comes with angsty position of not being heard by someone above you, but it's very empowering and like it pumps you up. So
So back to emotional.
yeah, yeah.
Emotionally driven. Does that make it better for you?
Well, I think emotional is just very open ended. That's maybe why I'm don't want to just say emotional because emotional is like that can be both sad or like angst is
Right. Yeah.
emotional.
Literally any emotion. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to clarify, like, when you listen to My Chemical Romance, which I love My Chemical Romance, it's typically I mean, you could say that it's I think My Chemical Romance actually has some very uplifting stuff too, but it's a little bit, uh, campier?
Doom and gloom. I was gonna say doom
Y
and gloom.
yeah, emo, like,
Yeah.
Linkin yeah, ok maybe that's what we're looking for, like, Linkin Park is definitely not emo in any way, um, they are yeah. So I think that the emo vibe compared to the new metal vibe is very different. Whereas emo is kind of doom and gloom, emotional, like depressed and angsty, and maybe even like a little bit of nihilism thrown in there. Whereas new metal is like frustration and anger at systems above you, systems of power that are above you, or something like that. You know, it still can have that like anxiety, but it's more about like fighting back against it. So I don't know. I think that's pretty good. I think we did a good job of picking that apart. Anyway, all right, we're 6 seconds in. It's funny though. We're covering a lot. Yeah. So
Yeah.
okay. So the intro strings are super cool. Very they're very powerful, very impactful. And then at 6 seconds, the drums come in. And so this drum beat in particular is super cool. It's actually the drum beat that played in the chorus. I don't know if it's a drum sample or if it's actually the drums being played with like a filter on them. I want to lean toward it being a drum sample, but
Yeah. I agree.
their drums are their drummer was really good. They had a really good drummer. I don't know anything about him, but I always liked his drumming. But yeah, so this drum sample is super cool. It sets up the um like at the time this was very unique and new. And so immediately with this kind of sampled string sound and then with the drum sample coming in, like this song, I can see it just immediately setting itself apart from everything else that was happening in rock music at the time because Linkin Park had a DJ. I mean, what didn't they? It was like what was his name, DJ Han or something. Um,
I don't know his name, but
they
yeah, that sounds familiar. I know exactly who you're talking about. I know what he looks like. Couldn't tell you his name. I could pick him
yeah,
out of a lineup though.
he specifically was a DJ for them though. Let's see, Han. Yeah, Joe Han. Johan, he did turntables, programming, and backup vocals. So like the fact that Linkin Park specifically had a DJ in the band um, was very unique. You know, if you think about like an '80s thrash metal band or something, '80s rock band, that wouldn't have been a consideration. You know, they might have put something into the song, but they certainly wouldn't have hired a full-on band member just to do DJ sounds. So again, Linkin Park throwing this stuff at the beginning, uh, just really establishing that they're not like a regular rock band. They're very different. It's a unique sound, and very few other bands. I mean, honestly, at the time, no other band could replicate what they were doing. So
I don't know that a band could do it now. I'll take that stand.
that's a that's a bold one.
I don't
Yeah.
think I'm not saying we won't ever see a band like Linkin Park ever again, because that's like dumb to say, but like they're gonna be few and far between.
Well, and here's the thing too, like I was saying, everything that they did was so creative, especially for the time. It was like just this ball of innovation. So, you know, we were talking about like the way they had you know, scream vocals and the singing, like two singers, one of them a rapper and one being this like very emotional powerhouse, and then the two of them just working together perfectly. But then you look at like this aspect that we're talking now where you have a DJ in the band, like that's completely unheard of before Linkin Park. I mean, I think Slipknot did, but I mean, when did Slipknot
Yeah,
really?
Slipknot did,
Yeah,
but
but
that's different.
it's
It's different.
completely
He's more
different.
like a sound sampler guy than like a
DJ,
DJ.
yeah. So and so yeah, I mean, but again, it's like yeah, those two bands are completely different, and so with Linkin Park, when you look at what they were doing, like it's still just such a unique sound. So like yeah, I think going back to what you were saying, it would be really hard nowadays to have a band come out and do that many innovative things at once immediately, you know? Like something about the like Linkin Park was just in the right place at the right time and were perfect at what they did, and they were just so unique and different. It was huge. Their impact was huge. So yeah, I think I might agree with you just in the sense that like it's going to be really hard for a band to do that now. So
Yeah, that and timing was key as well for them, I think.
yeah, definitely. But I think one of the things that's really cool about Linkin Park is that um, because of how innovative and unique they were and how good they were, I think a lot of their music has stood the test of time really well. Um, like I still will go back and listen to
I was
those
gonna
songs.
say, yeah, I agree. I can put on. I'm actually like I haven't listened to Linkin Park forever, and I have full intentions of listening to Hybrid Theory on my way into work tomorrow.
Yeah, Hybrid Theory is it just absolutely slaps, and so um, yeah, I think so going back to the song, you know, we're 19 seconds in and they've thrown, you know, this really interesting, extremely unique sounding string section here, and then they've brought in the drums and with this drum sample, and so they've established that they're a very different sound, like it's a very different sounding type band. But then they come in with the guitars and the full band at 14 seconds, and you know, this is a really awesome, you know, jam, but it's actually just the chorus without vocals. That's all it is. It's the exact same thing. So yeah, again, talking about how and also with this guitar with this you know, full band section playing the chorus music, we've now heard almost all of the music that will be played throughout the song in one way or another. We've heard the you know, first off we just heard the chorus, you know, front, you know, up front, but we've heard the drum samples which we used at certain points at a certain point later in the song, and then we've heard the string section that's going to be used throughout all of the verses, and then there all of the other little sounds that play um, are mainly just like small layers. So yeah, we've already heard most of the music already, and so now the rest of the song is vocally driven, but musically we're gonna feel like it's gonna sound familiar, and So yeah, I just want to point that out because it's very one of the things that Linkin Park was really good about doing was like concise songwriting, like making the most out of each section as it happened, and not wasting any time at all. So yeah, um, real quick, this music here, this chorus music, that starts at 14 seconds. I did want to point out, we talked about it earlier. It has the octaves over the power chords. This was actually kind of a punk thing, um, doing that. And it's something like that was very common amongst punk, like having the power chords playing. "Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na." So when I say power chords, I'm talking about like the background chord layerings, like the foundation of the music. That's essentially what the power chords are. Then you have the octaves, which are playing the na 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 no 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 no, and yeah, so it's really nice having that lead, which is super catchy, playing over the chords. It's a really good um, dynamic. I don't know if any of that made sense, but
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So I feel like, so I think this is a good time to kind of talk about one of my questions that I had to you. Like when you think of this song
mhm.
and its melody, like what is the thing to this song that is like, oh, like this is faint? And that sounds like, I think I asked that terribly, but like to kind of walk you through my, like when I hear the song, like I'll get the strings. I'm like, oh, like this is familiar. And then when that drum sample kicks in, I'm like, oh, okay, I know the song. This is Faint by Linkin Park. But like to me, the power chords are what make this song memorable until the breakdown, at least.
Yeah, the breakdown is definitely the so okay. I think there's two answers to your question. When I think of faint, I think of the breakdown. The breakdown is the differentiator between this song and other Linkin Park songs. Um, another flaw I think Linkin Park started to have around this album, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is that a lot of the songs started to sound very samey. They started to sound very similar, um, and it became hard to differentiate them. But this song would always the differentiator was the heavy bridge. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But that's the big one. But if this song were to just like start playing on the radio, it would probably be these chords. When the full band comes in, that's when I would realize, oh, it's faint. Uh, at least if like unless I'm really paying attention, it's like, can you list this song? I'm like, okay, start it, and then I'm like paying attention as hard as I can for the first few seconds. If it's just jamming, I'd be like, oh, it's a Linkin Park, hell yeah, and then these chords would come on, and I think I would just immediately remember like the I can't feel, and that's where it would click for me. Um, so yeah,
Okay.
does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so that's gonna be a big thing that we'll talk about when we get to the chorus, but that chorus melody is super, like it's, like, ingrained in my skull. So, when I hear those chords and I hear the music, yeah, I just immediately pick up on it. So, yeah, um, cool. So that's the intro. Hold on real quick. I've been looking at my notes actually. Um, okay, cool. So, then we get into the verse. And the verse is awesome. Uh, I think the verse is actually like with a looking back on it now, I think the verse is probably like my objectively favorite part of the song. Um, Funnily enough, I know I just said that like the two parts that I pay attention to or that like resonate with me are the other parts that aren't the verse, but like I love these verses and I think that they're super creative and like it's these types of verses that like made Linkin Park stand out as a band, because they were great at turning them into soundscapes that like if you imagine them being like painters, right? Like you can be a painter and you can just paint something very simple, like a very simple uh I don't know, think like Bob Ross, like a mountain, right? And I mean, well, actually Bob Ross would be what they're doing. How can I what am I thinking? What am I saying? I'm kind of like I can't quite say what I want to right now. Essentially, like when you watch like a Bob Ross doing a painting thing, if you've ever seen that, you know, he'll start with the mountain in the back. And he says, I don't know what we're going to paint in front of this mountain, but we're just going to start with the mountain. And then he'll say, let's put some trees and stuff here at the base of the mountain. And then he'll say, you know what? I think there should be some water. So let's paint some water next. And then he's like, cool, we've got a lake. Let's put trees in front of the lake. And then suddenly you have this beautiful like lake by a mountain scenery. And it just looks fantastic. And he's just very slowly layered these elements on top of each other. And it's created a full scene. And I feel like that's what Linkin Park does here. You know, they've got this string section which is really cool, and it plays throughout the, you know, we it's what we heard at the intro, but it plays throughout the entire verse. And then they layer on the cello, which is a little, it's a deeper string part, and it's kind of playing in the background. So next time you listen to this song, listen for it. But it's really, you know, it's one of those, it's again just a layer that's there that you might not consciously hear because of all of the other more prominent sounds, but it still adds to the depth of the part. Then you have you know, the drum beats, which are playing super cool, super um I don't want to say complex, but it's not a super simple drum beat. It's a pretty like involved drum beat. And then you have to top it off, you have the guitars just going burn, just playing this single note, um, just to give each like new section of the verse it, it's kind of a little bit of a heavier like stomp. So and then as the verse goes on, they layer on other sounds too. But yeah, that I just want to compliment them on taking these sounds and putting them together in different ways and layering them to create a really awesome soundscape. Because it's awesome. I love that. I love stuff like that. I hated when they stopped doing it and started making all their stuff simple. It got boring. So
Wah, wah, wah.
womp womp. I'm gonna take a drink of water real quick. You got any thoughts on the verse?
Uh, no, I mean, I think you pretty much got a thing. And you're right. Like their soundscaping is top tier, hands down.
Yeah, it's like when you turn on a Linkin Park song, you really do feel like you're transported somewhere else.
Yeah, like you know, that's a Linkin Park song.
Yeah. They and so we talked about like the vibe, that underground vibe too. They were awesome at setting that up. Like everything just sounds like, I think they, you know, they had a song on Hybrid Theory where they literally did the music video like in the sewers with like skateboarders and stuff. Um, I can't remember the name of the song off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Hybrid Theory or Meteor, but it was one of the two. And I know exactly what music video you're talking about. I just don't know the song off the top of my head
Like kind
either.
of green. It was
Yes,
100, it was 100% Hybrid Theory. Um, and I'm about to break, something like that.
one step closer.
Yeah, that one. One step closer. Um, yeah, so that underground vibe was definitely like that's what Linkin Park wanted. And so everything about their sound kind of lent itself to that. Um, you know, just the distorted guitars, the kind of like you mentioned, the distorted strings and the sampled strings and like the DJ sounds. Um, and so yeah, it was like great. Like you felt like you were in the streets, you know, spray painting stuff and vandalizing property and all that. So let's talk about the vocals. Let's talk about the rap vocals.
Ye-
Um, yeah, what do you think of these? What do you think of the? What do you think of like the lyrics and the vocals in here? Aubrey?
Sorry, my mic was muted. I was sneezing. um, click where we're at lyric wise for me for a timestamp.
We are here and here. So we're at the verse, and then we are just starting in the lyrics right here at the top.
Ah, okay. Um,
So it's like the
so I think,
I am.
yeah. Lyrically speaking, you know, it's one of those. I think it's one of those things. Like I think, kind of going back, talking about soundscaping and kind of how impressive they are as a band. It's like, all right, you have all this very much so rock band energy going on, and then boom, your first lyrics are very much so not rock band energy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, again, that's like the Linkin Park's thing, you know. Um,
Yeah.
it.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, as far as like, I mean, I would try to imagine hearing the song without these like rap lyrics and like singing them in some way, shape, or form, and I don't know. Like it would be a totally different song. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so here's the thing. Uh what's his name? Mike Shinoda, he's the rapper.
Yeah.
Um his delivery was always amazing. Always had like a very impactful emotional delivery when he rapped. I always thought he sounded great. And his delivery on this verse specifically is really awesome. You can tell it he captures that frustration of like well, let's go through the lyrics real quick actually. Or what were you gonna say?
Yeah. I was gonna say, so I think it's really interesting because in the past we've talked about like talk singing,
Yeah.
and this is definitely not that.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like he was like his delivery that I keep stressing the delivery because I think it's what set him apart from other rappers. Like he doesn't sound like other rappers. And he does
It,
it.
it's this is gonna sound dumb, but it's like I'm gonna say it's like he's rap singing.
Well, no, that makes sense. It's like I am a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard, handful of complaints, but I can't help the fact that everyone can see these scars. There is like this bob your head melody to that. Um, that's just super unique, and you just don't hear that from a lot of like rappers. Usually, rap like I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. It's just a very unique take on rapping, and I don't know if I've ever heard another rapper that sounds like him. Uh, I also think I want to point this out too because this is actually one of my favorite things about him, and I swear I wish more rappers would do it. He actually raps vocals that are like or lyrics that are like rock lyrics, where they are like he's how can I say this?
I know, I get exactly what you're trying to say.
Like
There's no like, it's
there's
not
no
not.
it's like poetry,
Yeah, I was gonna say they're not so much worried about rhyming and like,
metaphors and
yes,
punchlines.
yeah,
Like you're not gonna hear him talk about like I don't know. He's not gonna say something. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now. He's not gonna talk about like a celebrity or something, uh,
right.
or
And
like a
he's
pop culture
also,
event.
yeah, he's not gonna be like, I'm a poet and I didn't know it. Bada 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 bada. You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's just not what he does. And there's something kind of nice about that where it's like, okay, these he they took the content and the theme of the lyrics very seriously. One of the biggest complaints I have sometimes, even with Eminem, is that he'll have a very serious song and then he'll talk about like the Miami Dolphins or something. It's like, bro, like you're making art. Like, why are you talking about like the Miami Dolphins randomly? He's like, bring on the Falcons and Miami Dolphins. It's like sometimes it just comes across as kind of random and weird.
Yeah, you just need to like, don't rhyme to rhyme.
Right. And you know, think about the theme of the song and like the timelessness of your art. Like somebody 200 years from now isn't gonna like listen. Yeah, like they're not gonna know about what happened on Twitter or Caitlyn Jenner or
I
whatever
don't know that.
Eminem.
I don't know that Eminem will be relevant in 200 years.
Uh, May
So
well,
that's kind of actually, I have that as a, I don't know if you've seen the list. I added that as a topic to discuss of like, when do people musically become irrelevant?
well, that's gonna be a whole
I
set. That's
know
gonna be a really
that's
deep
a
because
that's another episode.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm not gonna get into the tangent. Yeah. So anyway, coming back to this, I've always admired the fact that Mike Shinoda was able to, he focused on the theme of the lyrics and what he wanted the song to say rather than getting in like a punchline or some random cultural event. Like most rappers do not. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna say it. I don't think any other rappers do that ever. Like I very rarely hear rappers take this type of approach where it is like poetry. They're actually treating it like poetry where they're singing about something and a theme and because here's the thing, it's almost like common and normal for rock musicians to do this where everything is this environmental, like what do I mean, like not environmental but like poetry, like you think about like Dio, right?
Yeah.
Like Dio would never write about the president in a song about like darkness and light and war and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
he wouldn't rap about like, you know, Seinfeld.
I think I think
Like,
maybe a good way to look at it is that this might be a hot take here. Um, I think maybe sometimes rap is a little more upfront about the discussions, whereas other genres of music tend to disguise the topic differently. Um,
mm, so
the only example I can think of off the top of my head is like thinking. I want to say "Pink" by Aerosmith, or like "Love."
mm,
Well, no, that's dumb. Never mind. Ignore that one.
yeah.
Um, I can't think of a great example right now.
So here's the thing. When you think about like the theme of the song, like what are we talking about, right? So the theme for the song, spoiler alert, or the theme that I wrote is like the frustration, this song deals with the frustration that comes from not being heard by those above you specifically. Like you have people who are above you that are looking down on you and they're not listening and you are actually speaking out. And that to me that theme, that's kind of the quote unquote theme of this song, is what is it like to speak out against, in opposition of, to some extent, the people who are not listening to you or who aren't taking you seriously, right? And so the way that they've decided to approach it lyrically is by talking about like, you know like for this very metaphorical artistic language of like, I am a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard. It's like, okay, let's just break those two lines down. It's like, I am a bit of disregard, I am a bit of loneliness. It's like, that's like, already we've got a really nice metaphor going. It's like, what does that mean when you say you're a bit of disregard? That means that that's what you actually are to the person who is looking down on you. It's or maybe that's not that's not it. It's more of like, I didn't think about this at all beforehand. I should have. But that's why we're talking about it. It's funny, I actually haven't broken these lyrics down this deeply, but like, okay, so think about it, right? When you have these lyrics, I am a little bit of loneliness. Let's just start there. It's like that already is very artistic language. Like, I am loneliness. Like that's, you know, first off, it's a metaphor. It's metaphor, plain and simple. But it sets up a whole lot of things there where it's like, I am a little bit of loneliness. Like, you're isolated, you're not being heard. And then he follows up, a little bit of disregard. It's like, that's how you're feeling. That's who you feel like you are. If you're saying I am that, I am loneliness, I am disregard. Like, that's, again, I maybe I'm not phrasing this right, but it's like, by saying it in that way with those lyrics, it's very different than like a normal rap lyric, which might say like, I feel so alone and you never listen to me, you know, which kind of goes with what you were saying about like handling it more upfront, more
Yeah.
direct language. Um, but that's kind of the point that I'm making, which is like Linkin Park and Mike Shinoda took this more artistic style, metaphorical style to their themes, as opposed to the rap style, which is more like
It's like
upfront
rap. I would say that a different type of artistic style, because rap I think is still definitely art for real, which I know that's not what you like. You weren't trying to say it wasn't,
oh
but I
yeah,
feel
don't.
like rap is more of like a rhythmic thing and rhymey thing.
Well, let me be very, very clear here. I love rap, and I'm not dissing rap at all. It's just two different approaches. So you can take this theme about like the frustration about not being heard by those above you. Like Eminem has a million songs about that. It's like you can, you know, and he nails them. He nails them all. Like that feeling of being the underdog. Like Eminem is actually one of the kings of that. And there's lots of rappers who do that stuff really well, who do that sound and that or that theme really well of feeling like the underdog, but you're not. Like Kanye has lots of great songs like that too. Um, though Kanye is typically a little more top dog style. But anyway, doggy style. Uh, hold on. Okay, so I love rap, and yeah, I'm not dissing rap. It is simply a difference in how you actually want to approach the lyrical content and how you want to convey your message to people, to the listener. So you can do it very directly, and one of the big things about rap is that it feels like they're actually talking to you, like you're in the room with them and they're talking to you directly. That's one of the appealing factors of it. But when it comes to rock, there's usually this more like poetic element to it, and you just very rarely see that in rap. But my Shinoda always did it here. Okay, so anyway, I think that that covered the kind of the way that they approach the vocals, and it's a good way to appreciate. Like, it's good to appreciate it. So let's just go through the vocals real quick themselves. I am a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard, handful of complaints, but I can't help the fact that everyone can see these scars. I am what I want you to want, what I want you to feel, but it's like no matter what I do, I can't convince you for once just to believe this is real. Um, or no, sorry, I can't convince you to just believe this is real. So I let go, watching you turn your back like you always do, face away and pretend that I'm not, but I'll be here because you're all that I got.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. So in general, like I said, I think it's really creative for a rapper to take this approach. But I got to be honest, I think some of these lyrics get very like uh, they start to border on corny. Um, a little cliche. It's not terrible. Like it's not bad. I just mean like 5% cliche. I feel like this is a topic that's been run into the ground to a certain extent.
Well, but at the time,
At the time, no.
20, 24 years ago, Cam.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But yeah. So this kind of reiterates the theme though, which is like so I let go, watching you turn your back like you always do. It's like okay, so this is clearly the person that you're listening to or the person that you're trying to speak to is not listening to you. They're ignoring you. And um so then he says, face away and pretend that I'm not, but I'll be here because you're all that I got. So that says, so to me, that's what establishes that like, that power dynamic to a degree of like this is I'm just gonna say it. I think the song is mainly about parents, about your parents. Um, you could say it's your boss or something, but like I think it's pretty or like uncle or grandfather. They leave it open to interpretation. I think the main interpretation here is like your parents aren't listening to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't specify it to parents. I would just say any entity um,
Yeah.
not being heard, have to speak up, kind of thing, to get your point across.
Yeah. So I think like as a theme, that's if I were to just talk about the validity of that theme, well, actually, let's get into the chorus real quick. So we've already heard all the music for the chorus, but then this is where Chester comes in with the actual singing. He sings really well, really awesome here. But he says, "I can't feel the way I did before. Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored. Time won't heal this damage anymore. Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored." So yeah, so we've set up the conflict in the verse, which is like I feel lonely, I feel disregarded. Um, that line especially, but it's like no matter what I do, I can't convince you to just believe this is real. It's like okay, you're not listening to me. I try as hard as I can. you're not paying attention. And that is, and then specifically, this person is turning their back on you. That's what they set up in the second part of the verse. And so the chorus is where we get to the meat of what we're talking about, which is, uh, don't turn your back on me, I won't be ignored. That is the main line for the song. Um, so yeah, let's talk about the melody first, actually, before we talk about like the lyrical theme as a whole, because I think there's a decent amount to say about the lyrical theme, but like this melody, I chose this song because I think this melody is awesome. Um, so let's break this melody down real quick. So it's I can't feel the way I did before. Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored. So if we just look at the rhythm of it, this is gonna sound kind of, this might get a little theoretical, but I think it's worth it. The I can't feel is actually like a whole note triplet section, or like a, oops. Yeah, I think it's a whole note triplet. The da, da, da. Um, if you don't know what that is, that means like in a measure, which is four, 1, 2, 3, 4. A triplet is evenly, it's three notes evenly spaced out. So if you had like a tempo, or if your measure was going like 1, 2, 3, 4, and you had a quarter note triplet, that means for every single beat, every single click, you play three notes evenly. So it would sound like one one en, two en, three en, four en, and you can kind of notate that with the word triplet. So you can say triplet, 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 triplet. So da 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 da. And if you speed that up, it, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4 da 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 da. But you can also slow it down and take that 1, 2, 3, 4 and do a triplet across all four of those beats. And that would be called a whole note triplet because it covers all four beats of the measure. So, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, da, da, da. That's what it would sound like to play three notes evenly spaced across those four beats. I don't know if that totally makes sense to people, but yeah, that's what's going on there. It's it's a very powerful uh rhythm. You there's act if you pay attention, it actually happens in a ton of songs. That da da da, you know, um especially on like guitar parts and stuff. It'll play a lot on guitar, like dun 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 dun. Like that would be an example of like a whole note triplet guitar section. But what's really interesting here is that Chester does that whole note triplet and then seamlessly comes back into eighth notes. So he does the I can't feel da 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 da. So those are eighth notes, which is the same thing as like the, so what I was doing where I was like 1, 2, 3, 4, and eighth note is two notes per beat. So it's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So it's the I da 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 da. Um, so yeah, you kind of do that whole note triplet sound is very aggressive and very like how I say it is, it's a very dominant sound. It's a very powerful sound. Um, so then by setting the chorus up with that whole note triplet and then immediately following it with this eighth note like rapid fire like throwing lyrics at you, the way I did before, don't turn your back on me. Like that's very powerful. It's really, really powerful stuff. And that's why that chorus is like hitting as hard as it is. Cause like, I can't feel the way I did before. Don't turn your back on me. And then we get into the I won't be ignored. And that's that's still eighth notes, but it's just not a continuous line of eighth notes. So da 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 da. Um which actually that's a really interesting eighth note line too, that I won't be ignored, because the way that he sets it up, I said like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and what he does is he does like 1 and 4, if that makes sense. Like that's the notes that he's hitting there, the 1 and 4. So he's skipping the 2 and the 3. I know this might not make sense to everybody, but I just want to at least say it, and then people who are musicians hopefully can appreciate it. And if you're not a musician, I hope that maybe you can. It might be something that you can learn and kind of see how musicians think about this stuff. So when you have that, so what he's doing here, where you have the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 uh, the downbeat is the 1 2 3 4, and then the upbeat is the and, right? And so what he's doing is he goes, I won't, and then he skips the two, and then he hits the and on the two. So I won't be, you know, because you could say like I will not be, and you could just fill that whole spot with syllables. So you could do like 1 and 2 and I will not be ignored. But by putting it on the and, the reason why I mentioned the upbeat part is because by having it on the upbeat, you actually create tension, because we naturally want it to resolve. We want it to like building the tension, and then you release it when you actually resolve and hit back on the one, or on a downbeat. So if you think about like let me I can't do it. I can't do it without an instrument on, but like essentially, long story short, he's creating tension with just that one line, I won't be ignored. And when he lands back down on the four with that ignored, like right down on the four, because he goes, I won't, like one and four. That four resolves, and it kind of completes the melody, and resolves the tension that was set up from the words before that were on the upbeat, the ands. So it's very, I know it sounds like way more complicated than it is, but it's not like it's I don't know. Maybe I've gotten a little bit too far down this rabbit hole of explaining what's happening here, but I just think it's really interesting that even this small line, the things that he's doing to set up the tension and resolve it and make this impactful is very interesting from a musical standpoint. And so essentially, to break it all down, you have this very powerful opening to the chorus. I can't feel, and so it's a little bit slower, but it's powerful because it's the quarter note, it's the whole note triplet. Then you have the rapid fire, the way I did before, don't turn your back on me. And then you have this very impactful, I won't be ignored, where he goes off onto the offbeat. So I won't be ignored. And then he does the exact same melody for the second line. Time won't heal this damage anymore. Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored. And so, yeah, there you go. That is a full breakdown on what is going on rhythmically. I think melodically, like in terms of the notes that he's hitting, they're pretty much I feel like once you get the melody for this, the notes write themselves. Or once you get the rhythm, the notes write themselves. Like when you come back down on the four at the end of ignored, the I won't be ignored. Like it just naturally makes sense to make the melody resolve. And that's what he does. He hits a resolving note um on the ignored. And so yeah, I think the melody just follows suit once you get rhythm. So yeah, okay. The the reason why I want to talk about all of that, just to kind of bring it back to earth. I know kind of in musical theory clouds right now, but I really want to talk about that because I want to explain like why is this melody impactful? Like what's going on musically? Why is this impacting me? Why is it pumping me up? Why is it, what is making it good? And so yeah, that's essentially it. It's the rhythm, it's the variations in the rhythm, and it's these little things that he does to build the tension and yeah, create like a nice rhythmic flow to the verse melody or chorus melody. So anyway, there we go. I'm done with that. I'm gonna take some water. Shoo. You still there? You still with me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did any of that make sense?
Um, I mean, yeah. But again, I know enough music theory to be a little dangerous. If I didn't know any music theory, I'd probably be like, what the heck is this guy going on about? Fast forward, fast forward, fast forward
Yeah.
to this part where
Yeah.
I'm just like, I just think it's a cool part. That's why I like it, guys.
Well, yeah, and so that's the thing too is like I try not to get too deep in the theory very often, but I do want us to have moments like this where we can actually get a little nitty gritty and explain like it's not magic. Like it didn't just happen. There's a reason why this chorus is and really all of Linkin Park's choruses are beloved and why they are like so powerful and why they stick. Um so yeah, like it I think when we talk about like what makes a good melody, it's having an understanding of all these dynamics and putting them together. Maybe to kind of explain like so I explained what it is, but maybe just to, I'm going to do like a little example here of like what if they didn't do the whole note triplet at the beginning? So instead of the I can't feel, what if they did like another burst section? So I'll say like time won't heal this, time won't heal or what I don't it's kind of weird to even try to do it cuz I can't quite like let me think. Like I can't feel this damage anymore. You know, okay, so what I'm trying to do is see what it would sound like if I were to put like a different melody there, but this melody is so well put together, it's honestly hard for me to even try to do that. It's like you could do like time will not heal. I cannot feel the way I can't feel. I got this all messed up. I sound like an idiot right now. Well, and I think I'm just gonna stop here. Anyway, that's what's happening in the chorus melody. That's that. Cool stuff. So, damn. It's
Tally
Friday.
ho!
Yeah. We're recording this on a different day. It's Friday. It's been a long day. So, okay. Anyway, let's move. Oh, let's talk real quick. Actually, no. I think the lyrics speak for themselves on this. We'll talk about the lyrical theme at the end of the song. So then we get to the second verse. Musically, nothing changes. So let's just go through the lyrics real quick. Um, I am a little bit insecure, a little unconfident because you don't understand. I do what I can, but sometimes I don't make sense. I am what you never want to say, but I've never had a doubt. It's like no matter what I do, I can't convince you for once just to hear me out. So I let go watching you turn your back like you always do, face away and pretend that I'm not, but I'll be here because you're all that I've got. So again, we start to build the tension a little bit more. So now it's not just that you're disregarded or lonely. Now it's I'm a little bit insecure and I'm not quite confident. Um, you know, I think that's just a little bit of a buildup. So we've explained like, okay, that he's insecure or he's lonely and disregarded, but now he's trying to work up the confidence, but he's unconfident and insecure. Um, you know, still building on like it's like no matter what I do, I can't convince you just to hear me out. Whereas the first time he said, I can't convince you to believe it's real or like what you're feeling is real. And now it's okay. I have the the person saying the words, the character in the song who is saying the words, has come to terms with the fact that it is real for them. And at first, in the first verse, they can't convince the you know the person of authority that it's real, but and maybe they don't even know if it's real themselves. But now they do, and now they're trying to get the confidence just for the person to hear them out. I think that that's kind of the step up. If I had to find like a step up or a change between the first and the second verses. So, what do you think about all this? I need you to talk for a bit. I need to take like a 2 minute break.
um,
Ugh.
I feel like, I mean, it very much so mirrors verse one, you know?
Yeah.
Um, I've actually never really paid super great attention to the lyrics. I feel like I say that almost every time we do one of these episodes.
Well,
um, like
it,
these lyrics are way more like deeper than I originally intended. Like when I sing this song, I'm really just like bobbing with the am, a little bit of loneliness, a little bit of disregard. Like not really, I know what I'm saying, but I'm not paying attention to what I'm saying, you know? Like I'm way more caught up in the vibe
So I
of
think
the song.
that's actually a really good point you bring up. And you know what? Let's talk about it now. I think that's a good bridge. Let's just talk about the theme of the song right now. Let's just talk about the theme and the like what is being said. Um, Spoiler alert. Let's just real quick. The last thing would be the heavy bridge. Um, I'm just going to talk about the lyrics on the heavy bridge real quick. We can talk about the music once we get there. But the heavy bridge says, "No, hear me out now. You're going to listen to me like it or not right now. Hear me out now. You're going to listen to me right like it or not." Okay, so that's the heavy bridge. That's the lyrics. So that's the climax of the song where you are now forcing the person to listen to you, and that is the climax. So the theme here, where you feel powerless, you got somebody who is in a position of authority above you, who is not listening to you. Um, I think that this is an I think that this is an interesting theme, and it definitely resonates when you're a bit younger. But I'm gonna say something might be a hot take. I think when you get older and you learn to approach scenarios with a little bit more emotional maturity, you start to realize that this doesn't actually work. Like you can't just scream at somebody and tell them to listen to you. I mean, maybe you can, but usually if you have to do that, the person's not gonna like that's probably not somebody that you even want to give the time of day to. It's like if you're not listening and you have to scream, like first off, and then once you become an adult and you're in adult situations, that doesn't really I don't think it's conducive to like working like or to like functioning in the world properly. I'm not saying that there isn't a place for anger and like yelling at somebody because sometimes you got to do that, but in this case, it's like you can't do this with your boss. You know, you
Well, that's
probably
not
can't.
true.
I mean, you
You
can, but
could
you'll
exactly one time.
yeah, exactly. You're gonna get fired. Like, so that's the thing. Like when we talk about the theme of this and like this very like angsty frustration, I don't think that it's something that like I think it's something that you kind of grow out of at a certain point. And not because you don't feel frustrated when people don't listen to you, but because you realize that like okay, if this person just isn't taking me seriously, you know, take all emotion out and think about the situation rationally. Like is it because I'm wrong or is it because they're stubborn and they're just not listening? And regardless of what the answer is, regardless of what it is, there's very few scenarios where yelling at somebody like this is actually going to work and have the desired result. I'm not saying it can't happen, but you find very quickly that not only is it exhausting for you as a person, but it just doesn't work. And I mean, all you have to do is think about, well, how would you feel if you were, a parent and your kid just starts screaming at you? It's like, okay, like I don't know. I don't know if that would work. It's not fun. You don't really, and it doesn't even have to be your kid. Just think about somebody else just screaming at you in general. You don't typically like it. An enjoyable thing. Like I don't think people really. There's very few people who actually just enjoy being screamed at. So it's like when we're talking about this theme, this frustration that you feel, um, and then you get to this climax with the heavy no, hear me out now. You're gonna listen to me like it or not. There is this element I think where you're like, okay, we've grown out of this, or you grow out of it. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah. I mean, definitely as a much older person than when I first listened to the song is still great. The vibe is still good, but it does not carry the same weight that it
Yeah,
did 20 some odd years ago. Not 20 some odd years ago, but close to 20 some odd years ago.
like
When I
15,
first
yeah,
heard it, at least. Yeah.
something like that, 15, 16.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like I remember listening to this, at school, and I'd think about like my parents would have gotten mad at me or something, and I'd just be like, "You're gonna listen to me like it or not." Like you actually resonate. It actually resonates with you. Then as you get older, you realize like, okay, wait, this doesn't work. And it's actually not a very mature approach to take when you're dealing with conflict or people who don't listen to you. Um, so yeah, I think that's I think that that affects the timelessness of this song to a smaller extent.
Well, so I think E so the stance I want to take is that teenagers are never going away, or angst is never going away, right? We're just not in that phase of life anymore.
Right. But maybe my what I would say is that, teenagers and their angst isn't going away, but they're going to make songs expressing it on their own, you know? And so this song won't resonate with a kid who's like 15. I mean, maybe it will resonate with them, but I think that they're much more likely to listen to an angsty song from somebody who's their
Right,
age
like a song that
now.
came out, right, a song that came out this year versus a song that came out 20 years ago.
Exactly. And so that's the thing when you think about like music from 20, 30 years ago and how much of it holds up, like which songs hold up, it's typically the songs that have themes and topics that are much deeper and address like more mature aspects of reality, if that makes sense. Like, like the loss of a loved one. I think about something like Nothing Else Matters by Metallica. Like that's a timeless song.
Yeah.
Like that's a timeless song. I'm trying to think of like another one off the top of my head. You know,
Coming Home by Motley Crue.
yeah, that's a good one. Um, or maybe even something like Lose Yourself by Eminem. Like
Yeah.
that's a timeless song because it deals with this.
Thunderstruck, AC/DC.
Yeah, exactly, like this idea of like just being awesome, like that never goes away. You never, at least you shouldn't grow out of experiencing the feeling of being awesome. You should always like there should be point you should have some way in your life to feel awesome for as long as you live. So like
Yeah.
even if you're an old man and you kick ass at chess at the park, like you should feel awesome. And you could go to the park on a Sunday and play against all your other old friends and then go home and turn on Thunderstruck and think about how awesome you are. That never goes away. So I just think that this topic is a little bit, as you get older and you look back on it, it is a little immature and it is a little something that you kind of grow out of, or I think that you should grow out of. Um, so when we're talking about these lyrics, the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because we're talking about these lyrics. It's like the lyrics are solid and the melodies are great, and you know, like you said, the vibe and the whole environment of the song is really good. The setting of the song, where it's like, again, kind of takes you back to the old days. I am a little bit insecure, a little unconfident because you don't understand. Like, yeah, you can totally sing to that, and it's great. But I would actually argue that I don't think the lyrics are as deep as they come across. They're using this very artful language, but the theme is essentially, you know, to me, it kind of reeks of like it's a whiny teenager. You don't understand me. No matter what I do, I can't convince you for once just to hear me out. It's like, why do you care so much if this person hears you out or not? Like that's actually an adult perspective, like a mature perspective. It's like if you have somebody in your life who is not listening to you, it's like, why do you care so much? Like, why are you trying to scream at them to listen to you? If it's your boss, okay, that's your boss. If your boss isn't listening to you, then tough. It's tough, but that's just life, you know? If you're an adult and your parents aren't listening to you, you can just not talk to them. And in fact, that typically ends up being a more mature response if you're dealing with like a toxic parent or something. So, but sitting around fretting about it and like worrying about it, like, why won't you listen to me? I can't convince you. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, you know, so that's the thing is like, I think that the theme is probably one of the weaker parts of this song, like the lyrical theme. But whereas like everything else of this song is great, like the melodies and the music and the layering and all of it. Like I just spent, 30 minutes talking about how great the chorus melody was. But when we get down to it and like what is this song actually about? Like we all relate to it because we've all felt that way at some point, but it's not something that you feel forever, and it's not something that resonates forever. So I don't know. That's what I think about that. You got any thoughts on it?
Nah. Tally ho.
On we go. All right. Let's so yeah, everything else is the same. Chorus repeats. We get into this heavy bridge. We talked about the lyrics already. This part kicks ass. He's just, I would actually he comes very close to actually screaming here. Um it's very brutal, very heavy. No, hear me out now. I do want to note something that you might not have noticed, but I did when I was listening to it. When they do that pause, uh, you're gonna listen to me like it or not. There's a point where all the music stops and he says a word. Um, there's like a sub bass that happens, a little like boom. And I thought it was really cool, and I've never heard it until I listened to it on my mixing headphones. So that's fun. Um, just a little detail that they threw in there. Um, the guitar riff here in this heavy bridge is pretty like, eh, it's okay. It's you know it's nothing special. It's just da na 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 da na 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 na. But it's not meant to be prominent. It is
I
simply
was gonna
there.
say, yeah, a lot of the focus here is vocally.
Yeah, it is 100% vocals. Another interesting thing I wanted to point out is that the drum beat is the same as the chorus. It's almost exactly the same. Uh, Very interesting. When I was paying attention to it, it's like you would think when this section comes on and how heavy and hard it hits, it's like you would think that everything's just going full throttle, but the drums, again, compliments to the drummer for knowing what to do. He keeps pretty much the exact same drum beat going. It's just the guitars and the vocals that change, and just that little change is it can make a huge impact. So again, like most things in this song, very simple but very effective. Very little, a simple detail but an effective one. So yeah, chorus or this heavy bridge is awesome. So then I'm losing my voice. So then we get into the final like little we have like a little small vocal bridge, which is essentially just the chorus, where he's like, he kind of whispers it, I can't feel the way I did before. Don't turn your back on me. And then he brings it back up. I won't be ignored. And he like fully screams that. We During this part, we get one of the layers that we heard in the verse, which is just that little eighth note guitar line that's just going like dun 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 dun. And then we get the drum sample from the intro kind of fading in as well. And so those two things build the tension really nicely as we slam back into the final chorus. Yeah. Anything on that?
No, I did think it was a great word choice to say slams back into the final chorus. Um,
Heck yeah.
I definitely like. Obviously, this is like the climax of the song with the heavy breakdowny stuff.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
at this time, I think kind of going back to what you were saying, um, definitely probably like the heaviest stuff I was listening to at that point in my life.
Oh yeah. This was next
Um,
level for me.
yeah.
This is. I thought I was so hardcore.
I'm trying to think of who else. Like Slipknot, but it's different. Um,
Yeah.
Bullet for My Valentine came shortly after, and they definitely, in my opinion, are heavier, but in like a
Yeah.
different way.
Something about this song in particular, and like there's just like something very raw about it. Whereas like and by raw, I mean again it's like that emotional raw where like Slipknot emotional, I keep saying that. Like an angsty raw. It's like that angsty like frustration. Maybe that's the way to put it. Frustration where like Slipknot is just anger, and like Bullet for My Valentine, I don't know. I think that
That- That's angst right there.
Okay, I was hesitating to use the word angst, but I'm glad you used it 'cause I'm like, I don't know, is it angsty or not? It's like, yeah, I think Boulevard Valentine is pretty angsty. It's like, "My feelings." Um,
Yeah. Your tears don't fall. They crash around me.
oh, I forgot about yeah, yep. Jeez. That's a great song, though. We should do that
It is
song.
a great song.
Okay, so anyway, though, yeah, this was awesome. I loved this song. This was, like, my hardcore 7th grade, like, "Nobody understands me. I'm a loner." So yeah, we come back into the 3rd chorus. Nothing changes at first, but then we do a double, and I actually they double the chorus at the end, but rather than just, like, repeating it, he actually does something really interesting here where he actually softens it, um, and holds the notes out longer, so he does the "I can't feel," um, and then he adds a harmony to it as well, which sounds really nice. I don't know what the harmony is. I assume it's like a third, but it sounds really pleasant, and it's just a really cool way to end this song. Because he holds those notes out, and then underneath it, he does the "Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored. Time won't heal." And then they finish the song out with the "Don't turn your back on me. I won't be ignored." And actually, the chord they end on, again, I didn't look up the theory for like the chord progressions and stuff, but it's a very aggressive, like angry sounding chord. It's not like a pleasant chord, and I really like that. So kind of accentuates like this was an angry song. This was a frustrated song. So yeah, that that's it.
I, I even think like the ending, because it kind of has that weird fade out, like I don't know, that weird sound effect of like the dun 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 dun.
Yeah, that little eighth note. That's what I was talking about with like the eighth note. Like I don't know if it's a guitar or whatever, but it's what was
Yeah,
playing during that lead up into the third chorus as well, and it plays throughout the verse too. Um, but yeah, it's
I think
again.
it's a really
Mm,
like it's a really interesting way to end this song because you end with like this in my opinion, a relatively powerful getting the point across moment. Then you kind of mellow out a little bit, and then it's almost kind of like you have this resolve with
yeah,
the outro, and it's just kind of like, all right, it was just an interesting way for me in my brain the way this like they ended it because you can
you
very
know
much
what?
so just end it with a I won't be ignored and like it's just like done. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's well, here's the thing, like, that's what's interesting when you really break down the songs, because it's like that was probably a conscious choice on their end, like, they had a conversation about that, and it might have just been as simple as, "No, we kinda like that, that's cool," but um what it could have been as well is that 8th note part, I'd have to go back and listen, I don't think I actually noticed it if it was there, but it could have been playing throughout the chorus at the end, that dun 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 dun, it's just kind of in the background. And then once they stop, like they apply a delay to it or something. And then on the recording software, when they, end that section, the delay just carried on. And they just said, okay, that when the delay stops, that's where we'll end it or something. It could have been something like that.
Yeah, that's
But
fair.
but yeah, no, it's a interesting. I think that chord they end on is super impactful too. So but yeah, that's the song. Cool song, super cool. Uh, not you know, definitely a angsty teenager song, but yeah. Okay, so also I don't know why the song's called Faint.
Uh,
Is
Me
it?
either. I tried to Google it to figure it out, and nobody had a great answer.
Yeah.
Or at least none of the sources I saw had a great answer.
Well, so that's the thing too, is like this was that period of time where you would just name a song like an ambiguous word or something, like
I
just
was
to
gonna say, like, to I get to that point, Linkin Park kind of has some weird, like the figure 0.9 or figure
yeah.
point oh 0.09. Like what? You know?
Well, I think that was part of like like, you know how on the new whatchamacallit album, new Bring the Horizon album, where they'll
Mhm.
do that, they'll like glitch out the letters and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's like a stylistic choice for the song titles. But what I was getting at is like they would assign this deeper meaning to a word or something. It's like, oh, it's called faint because my screaming makes the person listening want to faint because I'm so powerful or something. It's like, let's just call it that just because that's cool. It's a cool word. There's not a whole lot of like actual depth to it. It's more of just like, that's cool. And, people will find depth in it. It's like, but is it actually relevant to what you're talking about? Um, Beyond just like surface level relevance.
Right.
Um, so, because that's the thing. Like you could take almost any song and just call it something like darkness, and a lot of bands did that. So it's like, okay, cool. But what kind of darkness? Like,
Right.
what else? Like, so
Imprisoning me.
what?
I was singing one. Darkness imprisoning me. All that
Okay.
I see.
See, like that's a good example actually, where like the name one is a very unique name for a song, and it's very specific to that song. Like it's not just random, you know.
Yeah.
So okay, cool. Well, then let's just finish out. Go through my little like final checklist thing here, and if you have any notes, just let me know. Um, so yeah, the purpose of this song was to capture the feeling of not being heard by someone who looks down on you, specifically somebody above you, and what it would feel like, or what it feels like to speak out against them, or to make your voice heard to a degree. That was what they wanted to capture with this song. The genre and style is new metal, um, but specifically they do a really nice, like it's a combination of alternative hard rock and rap. um I always feel weird calling Linkin Park new metal. I guess they are, but they just always seem like they were their own thing to me. But yeah,
Yeah, I can kind of get behind that. I feel like I don't listen to like the only other new metal band that I can really think of off the top of my head is like Static X. I feel like technically Slipknot might kind of
I think of
be.
I think of Corn. I don't
Yeah,
know,
Corn too.
like I think like Corn, POD, Limp Bizkit, like that's the type of stuff I think of.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, I just don't think I've ever lumped Linkin Park in that group. But I mean, I guess they would have been.
They're also so different than all those other bands.
That's what I'm saying. Like they're just such a different thing. So I don't know. Um, okay, but yeah, we'll keep going. Song structure wise, it's very simple, very very simple structure, but very concise. The sections, we didn't get into timestamps, but I don't think there's a single section on this song that's longer than 20 seconds. Everything is very, um, it moves along very quickly. It keeps going, doesn't stop. So yeah, concise song structure, but simple. Nothing really revolutionary here. Compositionally, it is something they were great at doing, especially early on, is walking the line between having a lot going on, but also keeping the song very open and breathable. I think back to the verse, and I was mentioning like there's just the only guitar part in the verse is just that little downstroke, that like that. It's like that's cool that they threw that in there, and it keeps things open. So they were very selective about what they had and didn't have during the parts of the song. And that leads into my complaint of like later on albums they kept taking things out instead of continuing to find unique ways to put things in, and keep that soundscape there. So yeah, it's a really good mix of like strings, guitars, drums, drum samples, vocals, all of that stuff. So yeah, the composition is really cool. I would say that like also compositionally, I already talked about it, but like the vocal melodies are all super awesome. We didn't talk about the rap melodies very much, but they're really good. I think it just take a little too much time to actually break those down, but they flow extremely well. I do think sometimes Mike Shinoda can sound a little awkward on some songs, but very few songs. But on the big songs and like on this song specifically, he sounds great. and then Chester killed it as always. So yeah, with compositions. Mix wise, the mix is actually really dynamic. It's actually a part of the song where like usually the mix is just used to make the song and the elements of the song sound good. They actually do things like, that drum sample at the beginning. They mix it in a way that it's not very like it's more of like background noise. It's interesting to turn a drums into background noise. Um but that's what they did in the intro and they did in that little lead up into the final chorus. But
Yeah,
aside
I
from
was
that,
just gonna say
Mhm.
they just kind of like they blend things very well.
Yeah, going back to that idea of a soundscape, it's like every element of the song, you can hear it very well, but it even though there's a lot of things going on, it really brings you in. Like you're really in it. So it's cool. The mix is really cool. I actually think the mix for Linkin Park was one of the most unique mixes, period, and a very complex mix to nail, but it sets them apart from a lot of other bands. Like Metallica would never mix their songs like Linkin Park. Um, so yeah. Lyrical content. I'm gonna say it. I think that's relatively generic lyrics about not being heard. They could be interpreted a variety of ways, but I think the main thing is that it's about like your parents and stuff. But you can obviously interpret it as any figure of authority. I do think that it got old eventually because everyone did it, but also Linkin Park kept doing it. But at the time, these were just awesome, and especially if you were like a middle schooler, it just totally captured it. And that leads into the theme. The theme, I already said this, but the song is about the frustration that comes with not being heard by those above you. It speaks to a younger emotional disposition, and it definitely captures that feeling. But we grow up, and as we grow up, we learn to regulate our emotions a little bit better, and we learn how to approach scenarios like this with more maturity because that is actually a more effective way of approaching it. This way of approaching it where it's like you're going to listen to me like it or not. It's like that typically doesn't work. So it I don't think this song thematically ages, but like musically and compositionally it does, and it's always going to be a banger. But thematically, at some point you kind of I think most people stop relating to the song, at least in the present tense. They might relate to it in the way that they felt when they were younger, and that's cool. But I'm not listening to this song now thinking this is how I feel right now. It's like, okay. So anyway, okay, final artistic conclusion in my mind. It's an awesome song. It's a masterclass in simple, effective production on pretty much every level. Everything is very well placed and in its proper spot and methodically uh, chosen to be there to add to the soundscape. Even though the lyrical content and the theme is something I feel you grow out of, the artistry can be appreciated at any age and at any level of musical ability. So yeah, there we go. Woo! Another one bites the dust.
Bow. Boop,
Cool.
boop, boop.
All right. Well, unless you've got anything else, Aubrey. Um,
No, the only other thing that I wanted to kind of mention earlier, but we kept kind of going off on rants and tangents,
mhm.
uh, was that I kind of, I guess, touched about a little bit. I just think you know, kind of going back to what you said about switching genres and it's difficult, but they also did such a unique job of one having two vocalists that didn't overshadow, pretty much almost always complemented each other, but also this mixing of rock and rap, hip hoppy stuff, but also then like I'm a really big fan of the stuff they did with Jay Z personally.
You
Uh,
know, I, I gotta be honest. I never really got into it. I tried. Um, Maybe I need to give it another shot. I thought it was cool. I'll say this: I thought it was cool, and I appreciated them for doing it because I think it's a really creative move. But it just never quite hit with me. Damn. But yeah, I think that uh you're right though. Like singers have egos, man. They got
Yeah.
egos. And so the fact, actually, real quick, I do want to point something out that I saw whenever I was looking through the band's Wikipedia, is that they, from like 2000, from 2000 on, they had the same lineup forever. Like they all stuck together. There was what is it? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven of them. No. There was six of them. Sorry, six of them. And yeah, they all stuck together the whole time. That's very rare in a band that lasts for like 20 years.
Cough,
So
cough. Slipknot.
yeah, right. Is it even Slipknot anymore? Like, so no, it's very commendable to them. It shows that they had a lot of love and respect for each other. It's very difficult to do that and to last that long and be that successful and last that long. So props to them for doing it, and especially to Mike Shinoda and Chester Bennington for being capable of like respecting each other and having that mutual friendship and relationship to you know work together on songs and to complement each other. That's I've been in bands for a large part of my life, and like luckily I've been blessed with some pretty good band members, but I can tell you right now, it's really hard sometimes like to not step on each other's toes and to like and I'm like the guitarist, and it's sometimes it's hard for me to not step on the drummer's toes when I'm writing a song. So I can't even imagine, like, you got two singers, and let's just say the musicians write a verse and it's a really good verse, and one of them wants to sing on it, but the other one's like, oh, I want to rap over it. It's like, well, you know, how do you decide that? And that can get real heated real quick if you're not very careful and respectful with how you handle that situation. So yeah, props to them for making it work. Um, so yeah, cool. I
Yeah.
think we're done. All right, well, everybody,
R.I.P. Chester.
yeah, definitely. R.I.P. Chester. That was so sad. I was like, I don't know, that really messed with me. That was definitely an impactful one because that was my childhood. So yeah, R.I.P. Chester. I do hear that maybe Linkin Park might be getting like a fill-in singer. Um, it's gonna be tough.
That's another episode.
That's another episode. So yeah, cool. Well, everybody, make sure to follow us on social media, give us a like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We're at Simple Songwriting on every social media account. Um, and yeah, we I think next week, unless we just can't, unless we just don't have the time to really digest it, I think next week we're gonna be talking about the Death of Slim Shady. So
Yeah. No, I
cool.
think it's important to clarify here that, like, on a very superficial level, we're not gonna, we can't break down the whole album.
Absolutely not.
I think it's more so just like a share our thoughts and feelings and things,
Yeah.
and go off on some more tangents.
Yeah. Fun tangents. Yeah, I think there's plenty to talk about on that album, so we'll try to like it'll be our first time doing an album talk rather than like a song talk. So
Yeah, that's gonna be hard. We'll figure it out.
yeah, maybe we do pick a song. Um, we'll see. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. Volley, everybody. Volley.
Wale!